The natural does not seduce by intention. That is precisely why the seduction is irresistible. Where others calculate, refine, or perform, the natural appears unguarded, alive, and armored. In a world trained to anticipate manipulation, this absence of strategy feels disarming, almost shocking. People lower their defenses without realizing why. They smile before they decide to. They lean in without knowing what they seek. Something in the natural bypasses suspicion and speaks directly to a forgotten part of the self. The natural carries the energy of childhood not as nostalgia, but as presence. There is spontaneity in the way they move, sincerity in the way they react, and a softness and touch by self-consciousness. They respond to the world with curiosity instead of calculation. Their laughter arrives fully formed and filtered. Their emotions surface honestly, without apology. This authenticity feels rare, almost dangerous, because it reminds others of who they were before the world taught them to be careful. In the natural's presence, time loosens, conversations wander, moments stretch, the weight of expectation fades. People stop monitoring themselves so closely. They forget to posture, forget to impress, forget to protect. The natural creates a space where effort feels unnecessary, and that relief alone is intoxicating. This is where desire begins. Not the sharp hunger of pursuit, nor the fever of fantasy, but the warm, enveloping pull of comfort charged with aliveness. The natural does not make others feel inadequate or challenged. They make them feel welcome, desired without pressure, seen without evaluation. The body relaxes first, the mind follows. The natural's charm lies in openness. They reveal themselves easily, not because they are naive, but because they do not equate vulnerability with weakness. Their transparency invites reciprocity. People find themselves sharing stories they did not plan to tell, laughing more freely than usual, remembering parts of themselves long buried beneath responsibility and restraint. Around the natural, joy feels contagious. Their playfulness is not frivolous, it is grounding. They remind others that pleasure does not need justification, that delight can exist without performance, that intimacy can grow from shared laughter as easily as from longing glances. There is also an erotic undercurrent to this innocent, subtle, potent, often underestimated. Because the natural does not push, desire awakens gently, almost accidentally. A shared joke lingers longer than expected. A touch meant to be casual sends warmth through the body. A look meant to be friendly holds just a fraction too long. The absence of agenda allows desire to bloom freely, without fear of consequence. People are drawn to the natural, not because they feel chaste, but because they feel chosen by circumstance, as if connection happened naturally, without effort. This illusion of effortlessness deepens attachment. What feels enforced feels real. What feels real feels safe. And what feels safe becomes desirable in ways intensity alone never could. The natural's sincerity also disarms cynicism. In their presence, irony loses its edge. Detachment feels unnecessary. People find themselves responding with honesty they didn't realize they missed. The natural listens with genuine interest, reacts with real emotion, and engages fully in the moment. This attentiveness feels rare in a distracted world, and it awakens a deep longing to be present in return. Sexual energy around the natural is warm rather than sharp, inviting rather than consuming. It carries the intimacy of shared secrets, the thrill of playful closeness, the comfort of being accepted as one is. Desire here is layered with trust, curiosity, and a sense of rediscovery, as though pleasure itself has been rediscovered after years of forgetting how easily it once came. The natural also evokes nostalgia, not for specific memories, but for a state of being. A time when desire was uncomplicated, when laughter was spontaneous, when attention was complete. People feel transported back to that golden age, not as children, but as adults, remembering how it felt to be unguarded. This regression is deeply seductive because it offers escape not from reality, but from exhaustion, and so defenses dissolve. The natural never confronts resistance. They bypass it. Where suspicion would arise with others, ease takes its place. Where caution would slow connection, curiosity accelerates it. People feel lighter around the natural, more open, more themselves. This is the paradox at the heart of the natural's power. By seeming unassuming, they become unforgettable. By appearing harmless, they create deep attachment. By refusing to perform seduction, they become one of its most potent forms. The natural does not promise intensity or transformation. They promise relief. And in a world weighed down by performance, expectation, and self-control, relief becomes the most seductive offer of all. As the natural's presence settles, something remarkable happens. People stop bracing themselves. The guarded expressions soften. The tightness in the voice loosens. What they feel is not excitement sharpened into nerves, but ease warmed into pleasure. The natural has a way of dissolving tension, simply by existing, fully in the moment, unhurried, unfiltered, and afraid of appearing exactly as they are. This ease is contagious. Around the natural, conversations drift into laughter without effort. Silence no longer feels awkward. It feels companionable. Time seems to slow, not because anything extraordinary is happening, but because attention is complete. The natural listens with a focus that feels almost intimate, not analytical, not strategic, but open. When they react, it is honest. When they smile, it reaches their eyes. When they laugh, it arrives unrestrained. This authenticity strikes something deep, because it reminds others how rarely they allow themselves to respond without calculation. The natural awakens a longing most people forgot they carried, the desire to feel uncomplicated joy. They do not intimidate. They do not challenge status. They do not provoke competition. Instead, they invite play. Their energy is light, but not shallow. There is substance beneath the spontaneity, a quiet confidence that comes from not needing to impress. This lack of self-consciousness reads as courage. It gives permission. People feel allowed to drop their own performances, if only briefly. And in that permission, desire begins to form. It does not arrive as hunger, but as warmth. A pull toward proximity, a wish to linger, a sense that being near the natural feels restorative. The body responds before the mind assigns meaning. Shoulders relax, breathing deepens, smiles come more easily. The natural becomes associated with relief, and relief, once experienced, becomes deeply attractive. The natural also has a way of turning ordinary moments into shared experiences. A simple observation becomes playful. A minor inconvenience becomes a joke. A passing thought becomes a story. They engage the world with curiosity, and that curiosity spreads. People find themselves more alert, more responsive, more alive. They begin to rediscover pleasure in small things, not because the natural demands it, but because they model it so effortlessly. This playfulness carries an understated sensuality, not the deliberate allure of those who seek to provoke, but the gentle intimacy of shared delight, a laugh shared too closely, a brush of hands that feels natural rather than charged, a look exchanged that carries familiarity without assumption. The natural does not escalate these moments. They let them breathe. And because nothing is forced, everything feels genuine. This is where defenses truly fall. People realize they are not being evaluated. They are not being sized up, seduced, or tested. They are simply being enjoyed. The natural enjoys others openly, laughing at their stories, reacting to their expressions, welcoming their presence. This enjoyment feels intoxicating because it is so rarely offered without agenda. Being enjoyed feels like being chosen without conditions. Trust forms quickly here, not intellectual trust, but emotional safety. People find themselves sharing memories from earlier times, moments of innocence, of first joys, of unguarded excitement. The natural receives these stories without judgment, without irony. They respond with interest rather than analysis. This reinforces the sense that something pure is being protected rather than exploited. And yet, beneath this gentleness, desire continues to deepen. Because comfort does not erase attraction, it amplifies it. When someone feels safe, curiosity grows bolder. When laughter flows freely, closeness follows. The natural's warmth begins to feel personal. The attention feels intentional, even when it is effortless. People begin to look forward to the next moment together, the next shared laugh, the next easy silence. The natural also disarms cynicism. In their presence, irony feels heavy. Detachment feels unnecessary. People catch themselves responding sincerely, sometimes with surprise. Compliments are given plainly. Appreciation is expressed without hesitation. This sincerity feels refreshing and dangerous because it reopens parts of the self that were closed for protection. Around the natural, people remember how it felt to desire without suspicion. They begin to associate the natural with a lighter version of themselves, the self that laughed easily, trusted instinct, and allowed connection to unfold naturally. This association becomes powerful. Desire becomes layered with nostalgia, comfort, and emotional warmth. The natural no longer represents just a person, but a feeling or return to ease. And the more time spent in this atmosphere, the more others crave it. They seek out the natural not for stimulation, but for restoration. Not for intensity, but for aliveness. The natural becomes a refuge from the exhausting demands of adulthood, from performance and expectation. Being near them feels like stepping into a space where pleasure is allowed to be simple again. This is the natural's quiet mastery. They do not overwhelm. They do not dazzle. They welcome. And in that welcome, people find themselves opening in ways they did not intend. Desire grows not because it is provoked, but because it feels safe to exist. The natural does not seduce by promise. They seduce by reminding others how good it feels to be unguarded. As intimacy deepens around the natural, it does so without pressure, without escalation, without the sharp edge of intent. The connection ripens the way sunlight warms skin gradually, almost unnoticed, until suddenly everything feels alive. What the natural cultivates now is not excitement, but trusting closeness. And closeness, once established, becomes a powerful conductor of desire. People begin to feel strangely at home around the natural. Not the comfort of routine, but the comfort of belonging without effort. There is no need to impress, no need to perform. The natural does not reward cleverness or punish vulnerability. They respond to sincerity with sincerity, to play with play. This mirroring creates a loop of ease that deepens with every shared moment. It is here that something subtle shifts. The natural's presence begins to soften the hard edges of adulthood. The vigilance people carry on through disappointment, guarded through experience, loosens. They stop anticipating judgment. They stop preparing defenses. They allow themselves to react instinctively, emotionally, even impulsively. The natural does not demand this openness. They make it feel safe. And safety, when paired with attention, becomes magnetic. Conversations grow more intimate not because topics become explicit, but because they become honest. People speak about small joys, forgotten dreams, simple pleasures. They recall moments of wonder, of excitement, of freedom, times when desire was playful rather than strategic. The natural listens with warmth, never correcting, never reframing. They let memories stand as they are, validating the feeling rather than analyzing it. In doing so, they awaken a forgotten hunger, the desire to feel uncomplicated delight again. The natural's touch when it happens feels uncalculated. A hand on the arm during laughter, a gentle nudge while walking side by side. Contact arrives naturally, without tension. And because it feels innocent, it is received fully. The body responds before the mind can intervene. Warmth spreads. Awareness sharpens. The moment lingers longer than expected. This is the quiet eroticism of the natural. It does not announce itself. It sneaks in through comfort, through shared amusement, through proximity that feels earned rather than imposed. The absence of agenda allows desire to grow in its own shape, free from pressure. People begin to notice the natural more acutely, the way they smile, the rhythm of their voice, the ease of their movements. Attraction forms not from fantasy, but from familiarity warmed by curiosity. Around the natural, people feel lighter, and that lightness feels seductive. They laugh more freely. They move more fluidly. They become more expressive without realizing it. The natural's energy invites playfulness, and playfulness reawakens the body. The rigid separation between mind and sensation dissolves. Pleasure becomes something simple again, not an achievement, but a response. This is why the natural neutralizes defensiveness so completely. They do not confront walls. They make them irrelevant. Guardedness feels unnecessary in their presence. People feel that nothing is being taken from them, only shared. This generosity of spirit creates loyalty without demand, attachment without obligation. And beneath it all, desire deepens quietly. Because the natural enjoys others openly, their delight feels genuine and forced. When they laugh at someone's humor, it feels real. When they listen, it feels complete. This attention feels rare in a distracted world, and it creates a sense of being valued simply for existing. Being enjoyed without evaluation is deeply arousing, even if the mind does not immediately name it as such. People begin to seek out the natural not out of need, but out of preference. Time spent together feels restorative, energizing. They associate the natural with a version of themselves that feels more alive, more expressive, more present. Desire attaches itself to this feeling, not just to the person. And because the natural never rushes intimacy, anticipation stretches beautifully. Moments are allowed to build. Glances are exchanged without urgency. Touch remains suggestive rather than consuming. The tension is gentle but persistent, like a melody that lingers long after the music stops. This restraint is not calculated, it is instinctive. The natural senses when to pause, when to pull back slightly, when to let longing breathe. They understand, without strategy, that desire thrives where it is not crowded. They let moments remain unfinished, trusting that connection will continue on its own momentum. Those drawn to the natural begin to realize something unexpected. They feel more confident around them, not because they are being flattered, but because they are being accepted. This acceptance allows hidden aspects of the self to surface: playfulness, tenderness, curiosity. Desire becomes less about proving worth and more about sharing experience. The natural has created a space where attraction feels mutual rather than transactional. And yet, with this ease comes vulnerability. Because the longer people remain in the natural's orbit, the more they fear losing this feeling. They begin to wonder whether the lightness can last, whether the simplicity can survive expectation, whether adulthood will reassert itself and demand performance once again. The natural does not address these fears directly. They continue to be present, playful, sincere, and pretentious. They do not promise permanence or intensity. They offer now. And now feels so good that people hesitate to question it. By this point, the natural has accomplished something profound. They have reintroduced pleasure without complication. They have reminded others of a way of being that feels both safe and alive. They have made joy feel accessible again, not as nostalgia, but as lived experience. And as this realization settles, a quiet question begins to surface beneath the ease. What happens when innocence meets expectation? By now you understand the secret power of the natural. It is not seduction by effort, but by absence of effort. Where others strategize, perform, or polish themselves into stiffness, the natural disarms by returning people to a softer state, one they barely remember, yet instantly recognize. In this final movement, we turn that instinct into mastery. The natural's deepest effect is emotional regression. In your presence, people stop guarding their words. They laugh too easily. They speak before thinking. They forgive small flaws. They feel lighter, less watched, less judged. This is not because you impress them, but because you remove the pressure to impress you. You become a psychological safe zone. And in a world of constant self-monitoring, safety is intoxicating. To sustain this power, you must protect your sincerity at all costs. The moment people sense calculation, the spell weakens. The natural never appears to be trying to charm. Charm seems to happen around them. This means resisting the temptation to explain yourself, justify your actions, or control outcomes too tightly. You let moments breathe. You allow silences. You accept awkwardness with a small smile. These behaviors signal confidence without dominance, ease without arrogance. Notice how children draw others in, not by asking for attention, but by being absorbed in their own world. The natural mirrors this. You cultivate interests and pleasures that genuinely delight you, simple ones, even slightly impractical ones. A fondness for wandering without destination, an ability to be amused by trivial details, a willingness to stop and observe. People are drawn to those who seem quietly content without them, yet warmly welcoming when they arrive. This archetype thrives on contrast. Against cynicism, you bring wonder. Against rigidity, flexibility. Against fatigue, renewal. You are not naive, you simply refuse to let experience harden you. This makes others feel that life, around you, might still contain surprises. They begin to associate you with relief, with rest, with a return to something essential. In relationships of influence, the natural should avoid moral superiority. Never correct people too sharply. Never flaunt wisdom. Instead, ask questions that invite reflection rather than expose ignorance. Your innocence is strategic. It allows others to lower their defenses without feeling outmatched. They reveal themselves because they do not feel evaluated. The natural's greatest danger is overexposure. Because people feel comfortable with you, they may take you for granted or project their needs onto you. You must maintain gentle boundaries, not through confrontation, but through selective availability. Come and go lightly. Do not always be present. Let absence renew appreciation. Just as children tire and wander away, you too must know when to disengage. When you withdraw, do so without drama. No coldness, no punishment, simply a quiet return to your own rhythm. This creates a subtle longing. People realize that the ease you bring is not guaranteed. It is a gift, not a service. At the highest level, the natural becomes a symbol, not of youth itself, but of what youth represents: possibility, forgiveness, emotional honesty, and play. You remind people of who they were before they learned to armor themselves. That reminder can soften even the most guarded hearts. Use this power responsibly. Regression can heal, but it can also make others dependent. Encourage lightness, not escape. Joy, not avoidance. The natural elevates by reconnecting people to life, not by removing them from it. Mastered fully, this archetype makes you unforgettable not because you dazzled, but because you made others feel more themselves. And that, in the end, is the rarest pleasure of all.